All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Countless Vlogcast. I'm your host, Justin Rich. Today, my guest is mental health professional Burgess Brown. I want to talk about the importance of going to therapy, ways to get therapy, and coping methods. And hope you guys enjoy the show. All righty. All right. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What about you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. It's a great day. So, tell us a little about yourself. A little background.
Um, Little background. Originally, I'm from Liberia. Um, I came to this. I moved to this country in 2008. Uh, Played sports a little bit. Um, originally was supposed to go to law school because I got a bachelor's in criminal justice. But because of all the things that happened after I graduated, I decided to go in another route. And one of the things I learned about myself quickly was the fact that I love to work with people. Even when I was in college, back in college, I had the opportunity to do a lot of internship where I interacted with people, especially young people. And after I decided to do something else, mental health was just it just seems like the right fit. And yeah, so I went there. I got my master's in mental health, and since I graduated, I've been working as a mental health counselor. Most of my clientele are teenagers, and I also work with some kids, and I also work with grown-ups. But I really found myself being comfortable working with teenager adolescent. Anybody's in from what you would say from middle school all the way to high school. I work with that population very well, and it says things. Yeah, basically that's just a short interview about myself. Yeah.
So, next question: How has going to therapy helped you personally as a mental health professional, as like a black man, as like a human in general? How's going to therapy helped you?
How does it help me? Wow. Self awareness. Always come back to self awareness. Like, there is this thing about mental health. When you dive into your mental health, and when you get to the point where you start to understand yourself, and you start to understand your behavior, and you start to understand um, why you respond to things the way you respond to things, or why certain things stresses you out, or why certain things does not stresses you out. And then you start to understand those things that you just consider as things that you did in the past, and you start to see them as coping skills, and the way you cope with stressor. Um, I mean, it is mind opening, and it is life changing. And like I said previously, that's why I'm so excited that we are going through this mental health. I refer to this mental health revolution, where everybody somehow, and the internet have helped greatly. Social media have played a tremendous part in it, where people are starting to be aware of how important it is for them to for them to engage in their mental health, to go see a counselor, find somebody to talk to, especially for the Black community. We have to
Mm.
understand that there's always been this stigma associated with mental health when it comes to the Black community. We are always told to just be man up,
Mm.
stop whining,
Yeah.
and we don't understand that most of the those issues that we have, those struggles that we have, the issues of anxiety, PTSD, grow up in rough neighborhoods. I mean, like I said previously, like, I'm from Liberia, so I grew up during one of Africa's worst civil war in Africa, in the
Mm.
history of the African continent. I was there from day one to almost 15 or 16 years period. So when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to, I mean, I've seen it. Let me just put it that way. I've seen it and I've been through it. But mental health have helped me a lot in terms of understanding myself, and in terms of dealing with those things, especially the PTSD that follow after growing up in a society that grew up in a place like that. The PTSD that follow, dealing with it, and learning effective coping skills. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
So, how do we break that stigma of mental health? So we talked a little about it's become evolution now to revolution for like mental health now. But how do we
hmm
continue to break it to like it's like not no longer an issue to talk about, and we just like more comfortable going to therapy and what's talking about it too, right? About the issues.
I think the first step is to initiate the conversation. I think that's where most people get stuck. And that's why even when I as a counselor, most of the time when I interact, my clients come to me, one of the first questions I ask them is that, what's your opinion about mental health? I ask them, tell me, what is your experience with mental health? Have you ever been to counseling? Have you never been to counseling? Have you ever had a discussion about mental health amongst your friends? What would you say? Initiating the conversation where people are encouraged to engage within the conversation. And as long as we are engaging in the conversation, almost like what is happening right now in this country, where people are encouraging others to engage in entire race, the conversation of racism and systemic racism. People are encouraging people to get involved in the conversation. I think that's something that applies to mental health. Let's discuss this. You know, let's have this conversation. It might be hard, and it might challenge most of the things that we believe in, and most of the things that we don't believe in, especially when it comes to mental health. You know, all those things, all those things that we were told when we were younger, and I know how to brush it off, get over it.
So speaking that a little bit too, like issues in the Black community too. I know you grew up in Liberia too, but you probably seen like the same issues though, and like growing up in urban areas and all that too. So like, what are some issues? Talk a little about that, with like from race to like PTSD to dealing with police to dealing with gun violence and all that too. Just talk all about it, like let it out. Like.
All right. I mean, first of all, when it comes to mental health, people don't want to have the conversation. For some reason, the word, people still see it as a personal thing. Like it's my personal struggles. But if the weird thing about it is that your personal struggles, it affects, hello?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Your personal struggles, what you refer to as your personal struggle, is my personal business, and nobody should get involved. It's my personal thing. But the problem is that it also affects the people around you, because it feeds into your behavior, and it feeds into how you see the world, how you interact with people in the world. So it is not a personal thing anymore, especially if you're in a relationship. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Especially if you are in a relationship and you are interacting with others, and your behaviors and your attitudes and your demeanor in general is affected by your mental health. So something that you're referring to as personal is affecting people around you. So as an individual, I think that's the time for you to self-reflect and be open to that conversation. And as a person, like an individual who grew up doing, like I said, one of the worst conflict in the history of the African continent, it was rough. It was rough. It was hard. There is just something associated with growing up in a place like that, growing up in a society like that, where, I mean, death, destruction, that uncertainty, the idea that you're not even where you live, you go for year to year in and year out, where you're not even certain if you're gonna survive the next day or where your next meal is come from. When it's in that level of violence, and it takes a lot to come out of that and be able to do something in this world and be able to cope in other ways. But I mean, for me as an individual, I was lucky to have a very strong mother, who was educated. I was fortunate to have being one of the few people among my friends that had a parent that was educated. So education was always the thing that my mom would stress to me and my sibling. You know, she would always say things like, the world that you see outside your window is not actually how the world is. And she would tell us about, when all of this is over, there is one thing there is one thing that will put you ahead. And she would constantly stress the fact that it's going to be education. She said you have to build currency. You will have to educate yourself. You have to learn how to read and write. You learn how to express your views, express your opinion, being able to self-reflect. And she's saying all of those things, and especially your education, they're going to play a major role in the world that will come after. She said, because she will emphasize to her that this is not how things are going to be forever. This is going to pass. And the world that is going to come after that will require individuals who are educated, individuals who can read between the lines, and individuals who are willing to step up to the occasion when it is time for rebuilding.
So for those that aren't strong enough in the situation still, what would you recommend for them to those still in the same situation with like being tough, trying to like day to day, like not sure if they'll be able to survive or like the next day. What would you recommend for them to cope with that? To if they're not able to access therapy or an outlet.
I mean, one of the more effective things, especially for young people who are caught up in situations where they don't have all the resources they need. One of the things that I know that effectively work is the finding a role model. And it's just unfortunate that most of the times, most of the kids will relate to individuals who are not, are not set a good example as their role model. But finding that role model first. Look at somebody, look at their life, especially somebody who's doing something positive. A family member in somebody in your family who is doing well, who have somehow pulled themselves out of whatever difficult situation they were born into and have excelled in some way. If it's you're a young person, if you're not ready to address the issues in therapy yet, find a role model. Get to understand that person. Talk to them every now and then. Ask them for guidance. Ask them to help you through the process. And sometimes just ask for understanding. Find somebody to talk to. I don't care who it is in your family. As long as that person is somebody that you subscribe to, somebody that you respect, and somebody that you know that you want to see yourself. Talk to them, have conversation, because it starts from having a conversation, open and honest conversation about what you want and how you want to get it, because it comes down to motivation. Being in our community, we as people, we have always been people of tribe.
Mm.
And that's actually one of the things that affect today's society, because when we went through, we went through we went through two revolutions in the past, and we're going through one right now. We went through the agricultural revolution, we went through the industrial revolution, and now we're going through the technological revolution. And the industrial revolution created this space where people we went from being in tribes and hunting together and being together, where everybody that you interact with was in that tribe, was in that group with you. But when the industrial revolution took place, we became individuals, where people moved to cities and other things. But we are still species of tribes. We still need other people to relate to. We still need other people to connect with. So do find your tribe. Look around you. Find those people who share common things with you, and build your tribe. You start from there.
So in terms of finding a mentor and therapy in the virtual age, two-part questions. Like, first start with finding a mentor, and then finding therapy in the virtual age too, with all this with the coronavirus going on too, and Black Lives Matter and all this stuff too. People aren't able to go to work though too. So what are some ways to find a mentor and find therapy in this digital age?
I mean, finding a therapy is just like you got to tap into your local, where you live locally, the resources there. You have DCBS, you have another agency in your community that you can reach out to and ask them for therapy. Sometimes, I mean, we unfortunately, we live in a technological world right now where you can pick up your phone and you can Google and you can see the listing of all the local therapists around you. You can start from there, and I would say, so I don't think there's anything wrong with counseling shopping. Go counseling shopping. Set an interview with each of the local counselors in your area and go and talk to them. For at least set up one session, go there, do an initial intake, and then maybe until you find that person that you really click with. Because the problem is there has to be some kind of chemistry between you and your counselor. You have to have confidence in your counselor, and that's one of the reasons why some Black people struggle with finding counselors. Is that culturally they don't find that person who can kind of relate to them. And even most of my clients that I've had who are Black would tell me that I have struggled a while to find somebody who to really understand the dynamic of my own situation, that have that kind of cultural connection to, that can understand my language and understand my expressions or my dialect, the way certain things, because we have a dialect, especially the Black people, we have our own dialect, and if you don't understand them, if you don't understand it, sometimes another counselor will struggle to understand it. So yeah, but the problem is that you have to go out there. You have to go out there and look for them. When it comes to finding a role model, I mean, look in your own personal life. I always encourage people your role models to be people. We always aspire to celebrities or other people that are role model, which is fine. There's not absolutely nothing wrong with it. But also find a mentor, a role model mentor, that should be somebody at least that you can talk to, somebody you can reach out to, somebody that you can ask for ideas, that you can share ideas with, that you can share opinion with, somebody close, somebody within your own circle, and you can start from there. Because the moment you start to have those conversations with your mentor, you will find you will get yourself in that place where you are ready to have a conversation with a counselor. because I think that one of the reasons why people struggle in counseling is that most of the time people go to counseling when they're not there, yet, they're not ready yet. Because the information that you provide to your counselors, the perspective of your own life you provide to your counselor, that's what your counselor will use to be able to help you. But if you're not ready, I mean, you're not even being. Some people go to counseling and they're not even being honest with themselves. And I've had people sit across from me as a counselor, and I know that they are BSing me with some of the information that I'm providing with me. and because they're not there yet, you know, and because the people, even when it comes to mental health education, like I said, there is still this stigma attached to mental health. People always, I hear people define mental health usually as the walking to a room with a stranger and telling him all your personal secret or every personal things about you. And when you define mental health like that, I mean, I'm not surprised why people go and sometimes they don't even want to say anything. They just tell you, almost like they play this game of, I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear, or I'm just going to skin around whatever issue that I'm struggling with because I don't want to be real open. And with that, I mean, you're not going to have progress in therapy if you're not being honest, because that is the one place. That's why we as counselors, I tell my client, I'm like, the things that you say to me, first we discuss confidentiality and what it is. The fact that whatever that we discuss between me stays between me and you. And I'm just not under the obligation to just keep the things that you say to me because I want to. No, I'm legally required to. I could lose my license and probably end up in jail if I don't handle the information and things that you tell me very well. So yeah, we have that conversation. And if my client gets secure, because I tell them, first thing I express to them is that it is my responsibility to make you comfortable. I'm like, it is my responsibility to make you comfortable. It is my responsibility to make you as comfortable enough to the point where you can open up to me. And
so how? Oh, sorry. So how has it changed though in the last couple of years, the mental health industry and in general, like the overall industry?
I mean, I've been involved in mental health close to 10 years now. Before I became a counselor, I worked at some facility for young men, like a residential facility. So I've been within the field of mental health for over 10 years now, and I can tell you how it has changed. Social media, like I would give social media, because I mean there are a whole lot of things that happen on social media that that affect mental health in a negative way. Because I even think that the increase in anxiety over time, especially among college students and teenagers, is associated with social media. But one of the positive things I think social media have also do places like Twitter and Instagram and other places where people are having conversations on Facebook is that it have exposed people to that mental health talk. Because you know that, especially since I've been in this country, the only time you hear mental health is after a school shooting or some kind of mass shooting somewhere. That's the only time mental health will enter the conversation. But the moment that shooting have gone for a month or two, mental health slink out of the conversation again. But social media is one of those places where mental health, they have tried to keep mental health in it. How to call it? The celebrities are now openly talking about their own mental health struggles. Celebrities talking about how they struggle with depression and they struggle with bipolar. Even right now, we have the issue with Kanye West, and bipolar is now one. I was searching the other day. And since the issue with Kanye West came up, one of the most Googled word was bipolar, because when his wife came and talking about, that he's from bipolar, a lot of people started to research what bipolar was, started to understand it. So those things are happening. So people are trying to educate themselves gradually. So now, even if you struggle with bipolar and I've never known before, but just the idea that you look up and you see some of your symptoms and you're like, I'm gonna have bipolar. But it shouldn't stop there. Just don't get the information from the internet and just stop there. Then you have to take that information and you have to take it to a counselor. You have to get assessed for it. Don't self-diagnose. Do not self-diagnose. And which is kind of common among people. People read up or go online, look up a special diagnosis, and they see they have one or two symptoms. And they go around telling people I'm bipolar or saying I have anxiety issue, I'm depressed. No, always allow a professional to diagnose you.
Okay. So, what are ways to cope after a therapy session? Like, it's all good to go to therapy. What are ways to cope after a session too? Like, so you feel better about your life and you progress.
Okay, but yeah, I mean that is one of the work. That is one of the collaborative work that you have to do with your counselor. That's one of the collaborative work you have to do with your counselor. You and your counselor. I'm sure that most good counselor do a collaborative work with the client. That one thing I tell my client, I'm not sure that I draw that line very quickly in our therapeutic relationship. Like, I'm not your boss. I'm not. I don't have. I'm not the one who would give you answer. We are going to figure these answers together. So we go within our collaborative work, and we try to find coping skills, how to cope with things. What are the small changes the clients can do that will affect them, because there are certain diagnoses, things like bipolar or depression, anxiety. Some of those disorder they do require lifestyle change. Like especially like the depression. You cannot manage your depression without involving some lifestyle change. You have to change something about you. You cannot effectively manage things something like bipolar without introducing routines. Like you got to manage or medication management. There has to be some form of medication involved, and there also has to be some form of routine involved. You have to build routine. Even depression, there has to be lifestyle change. You have to encourage people to go to the gym. You have to encourage people to take up medication. People how they call it medication, or sometimes or even meditation. You have to work on people's self talk. And those are things that the coping skills. Those are things that you and your counselor will have to sit down and work together to what works for you. Because sometimes if a counselor is engaged with a client and you're not doing it collaboratively, sometimes you might set up a treatment plan or personal goal or long-term or short-term goal for the client. And those are things that the client have tried already. And that's why some people go from counselor to counselor and they can't find the right counselor, because most of the counselors are doing the same thing. And the client, all coping skills does not work for everybody. It has to be individualized. And one of the ways that you got to talk to the client, tell them what works for you, what has worked for you in the past, what's some of the things that you and you guys do the work together. And
Right. So
mm-hmm.
yeah. So talk a little about one of the issues we talked about and then talked about the news and media is like the police and mental health too. So what are some ways we can go about like getting help for people without the police involved too? Say somebody's having the stress out in the public. What are some ways we can cope with that too without having the police get involved?
Put the police. I mean that I know that the whole idea of defunding the police, it seems so radical, especially if it is not explained by the right people. If the right people does not explain what people mean by defunding the police, it seems that the people trying to abolish the police, like get rid of the police totally. But one of the things one of the ideas that is involved in defunding the police that I really think is a good idea is that finding other agency or institution within society that will address mental health issue instead of the cops. Because and one of the training, and one as a counselor, if I most of the times when I see videos of police officers interacting with people, one of the things I think is absent from that interaction is de-escalation. Like we literally have to like tattoo de-escalations on the forehead of a police officer. I don't think that somebody who is carrying a weapon and is given to setting a stand on the right to use it should not be trained should be trained in de-escalation. When I work in when I used to work in facility, mental health facility, we went through drastic long and drawn out de-escalation techniques where we learn how to de-escalate people. Especially because the problem is that if a police officer pulls somebody over and maybe they have drugs in the car, or maybe they have something illegal in the car, or they're stealing, that individual is going to most of them are even having like an anxiety, going through an anxiety episode already. They're freaking out. They're probably going to get a ticket that will cost them a job. Something going to happen. That person is freaking out already. So, for an individual to be in that state and you are giving them command, and sometimes, yeah, they do struggle understanding that command because they are freaking out. They want to get out of whatever that is about to happen to them. And sometimes, yeah, without frustration, people do act out. But if you have a police officer who is specialized, who is well trained in de-escalation, he can be able to de-escalate that individual to an extent where that person can become very compliant. Even when the individual, if the person is escalated and it's not people are cussing the cop or the yelling and the screaming, and you have a police officer who is taking all the necessary precaution, because we want police officers to take necessary precaution, but also can also be able to de-escalate that situation. So I think de-escalation should be something that should be definitely stressed when it comes to policing.
Great. So what is continue with that too. Let's continue on with you talking about too, but add to like what's the new normal now for like life in general moving forward now too. I know a lot of people are like wondering, uncertain about the future too. If you could talk a little about like from your perspective and mental professional perspective, the new normal and what we can do to work with that too in our present time.
What the question again was what can we?
Yeah, what can we do like now to help our like get like have a better life for the new normal?
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep with the no mental health conversation. Keep having the conversation. We need to keep having this conversation. That is the future. That is the future of making the world a better place. I mean, like even the U.S. Constitution said we continue to work on making working towards a perfect union. And I think one of the aspects of working towards a perfect union is that the aspect of having these mental health discussions, having these mental health talk, making it comfortable where people, and I would not even be against the idea where somewhere between middle school and high school, kids should be educated to mental health. They have some understanding what some mental health disorders are. For things that ADHD, understanding how it affects you, understanding depression. If you ask someone what anxiety is, the person is supposed to at least get an idea, because like I said, most people are walking around misdiagnosing themselves.
Oh, that's a good transition too. So, since somebody doesn't want to go to therapy, what are some resources they can use if they don't want to go to therapy, or they went to therapy, it doesn't work for them too? What are some like other outlets and resources they can use?
Resources that can you find? Look around your community. Look around your community. What is available to you? Because it also depends on what is available in your community. Talk to family members who have been through who have struggled. Because the problem is that we know, especially in the Black community, and that's why I'm glad that we even in the Black community, mental health is becoming something that we talked about, especially for young Black men. The struggle that they go through, grew up in society, grew up in certain society, and being exposed to certain things. Seeing gun violence, seeing your friends get killed, seeing your family members get killed, the PTSD that comes out of. You don't have to necessarily be on the battleground to have PTSD. There are kids who grew up in the inner city who have experienced things, and they struggle from the symptoms of PTSD, like literally a soldier that come from Iraq. The withdrawal behavior, the anger that followed, the frustration that followed, the lack of interest that followed. All of those things feed from a place of PTSD. And having that conversations with family members, people that have been through it. And I hope that those family members will be educated enough to encourage them to seek some mental health help. Because you can't solve the mental health problem by not engaging within the process, or not engaging in the process or in that activity, or going to a counselor and finding somebody, some professional to talk to. Because there are certain things that, especially if think that PTSD, it is one thing that to fully unpack it, to unpack a PTSD, a trauma that's attached to it, it has to be done within a safe environment. It has to be done within an environment where the person that is handling that information, that is processing, know the client, the person know what they're doing, the person have an experience about it, they are educated on it. Otherwise, you can do more harm than good.
Okay, so yeah, you talked a little earlier about a lot of people don't want to go to therapy because they don't see like the same like color like therapists. So could you give advice out there, like people in school and like people like just beginning their practice? Could you give advice to them a little bit, therapists in particular?
Advice to the clients.
The advice to the people studying to be therapists, and the advice to those in school studying and to just begin their practice.
I mean, how to call it? The good thing is that find a good program first. You know, if you want to become a therapist, find a good program because especially the K prep programs. You know, find a program because especially for when I was in graduate school, we did multicultural. We had a class where that just focused on multicultural. That you guys could in the entire semester just educating on you working with people with outside your culture. Now you know when you go into those classes, take them seriously. You know, learn a lot about them because there's a lot of mixed signals that people, even in therapy, there's a lot of cultural behaviors or cultural signals that people can express within therapy. And you as a counselor, when you don't understand it, you can you don't know what's happening. And for an example, that's in a culture where eye contact is not encouraged. And as a counselor, if you're working with an individual who is not making enough, is not doing a lot of eye contact, the assumption is that the information that they're providing to you, they may not be true, or maybe they are covering certain things, or because they seem to enclose, or maybe they fold their arms. What we do bad, we study body language, you know, and because as a counselor, that's one of the things that we study. We study is that the fact that you can look at a client body language and you can kind of guess what that client is what it's saying, or when you especially when you introduce any topic and the clients fold their arms or they're not making enough contact, it mean that there is something sensitive. But sometimes it's not the case. It's maybe just culturally those are things that are accepted. That's certain culture, especially like Asian culture, some African culture. Eye contact when you're talking to somebody, making eye contact with them is not encouraged. It's almost like being disrespectful. Even from our own culture, like making eye contact with somebody while you're addressing them is something that is discouraged. Especially when you talk to somebody that you respect. You usually look down when you talk to them. So yeah, as a counselor, when you're going through those multicultural classes, I say pay attention, take it seriously, learn as much as you can about other culture and other behavior trait. Because if the only thing that tool that you have is from your own culture and your own understanding of how people behave, sometimes you might completely misread your client and may not get them. So yeah, and there's a lot of also after how we call it continuing education. There are seminars and webinars where people from like African American therapists educate other client other therapists about how to interact with people in the African community, African American community, even interacting with black men. I think you should have some study to understand the cultural aspect of interacting with black men, especially in therapy and because personally almost that they're speaking codes. That is something that I think a counselor that is from a different culture should have the opportunity to study and educate themselves on before they engage within that kind of therapy, because otherwise you will miss a lot of things in therapy. And you will have this scenario where the client will feel that they keep coming and they're making no progress, or sometimes they feel like you're not understanding them. But yeah, so educate yourself. Educate yourself. Familiarize yourself with things. Go to seminars, learn professional, buy books, read, and educate yourself better. I think if you have more information, because education, I mean, it always makes things better. The more information you have, the better equipped you are, the better ready you are to engage within those conversations. So yeah.
Great. So, wrap it up. Could you give advice out there to people struggling through unemployment, like illness, race, all that too? Just wrap it up. Advice out there, some words of encouragement to them. That'd be great.
Um, Look, there is a reason why we as people, when we walk forward and we don't walk backwards. It's because we are meant to go forward. And no matter what is happening around you, no matter what the circumstances are, how difficult your life may seem, there is always room for improvement. There is always hope. And I would encourage you to hang in there. Going through these difficult times, you might find yourself unemployed, you might find yourself discouraged. You know, I encourage you to hang in there, seek help. Sometimes we live in a society where we would like to suffer with ourselves. Go through this period in our life where we feel that especially sometimes, especially for teenagers, I hear them saying, I don't trust anybody. And I tell them, that is a real broad thing to say, that I don't trust anybody. I'm like, because you wouldn't say that, especially when it comes to things that affect you personally. But we trust people all the time. If you went to the restaurant and you sat there and you ordered food and they brought the food out, you trust the cook to prepare that food for you. There is so much that can go wrong because that food is going directly within your body. When you get on board a car, even if you get in the front in the passenger seat of a car and you ask your friend to drive you to the store, you are trusting them with you literally trusting them with your life. So when you get on a plane, you're trusting the pilot with your life. So you do trust people. But most of the times when it comes to things that affect you or things that really matter, we say things like, I don't trust anybody. I go through my life, I don't trust anybody. I think you should allow people to tell you who they are before you can measure the level of trust for them. Or you should go into situations. You should allow yourself the opportunity to trust people, because the world we live in, people are not perfect, and most of the times we have, especially for teenagers who have been abused or had a hard life, they have been through so much that they get to the point in their life where they say to themselves, I don't trust anybody. But I encourage you to try to, because the truth is that we live in a world where things are very inconsistent. There is no such thing that everybody that I deal with will have to treat me right, or will treat me a certain way for me to trust them. Because sometimes we just have to trust the process. We have to post safety guards in. We have our own personal boundaries and respect other people's personal boundaries. But we have to learn how to trust people, because that's one of the things I think most of the time therapy fails, is because most people go into therapy with the notion that I don't trust anybody. So they spend the entire time talking to the counselor with the idea that I don't trust my counselor. So even if they can't, because your counselor is almost like, I will give you an analogy. Your counselor is like the guy behind the counter when you go to how to call it, when you go to a department store, or you go to places like Lowe's, and you almost like your mental health is like this cabinet that you are building. You are building this cabinet, and you have spent your entire life trying to put this cabinet up, but you can never get it up. Every time you put it up, it falls down. You can't get it up, and then you go to the store, and you go to the store, and you meet an expert in the store, and you ask him, and you describe to him, almost like the relationship with your counselor, and you describe to him, look, I got this cabinet, I have struggled with it for years, I struggled to put it up. And then the counselor, now, who is the person working in the department store, tell you, okay, I think you need nails, you need a drill, you need hammer. Those are your coping skills. The person in the store now, which the counselor, give you all these tools. They give you a hammer, they give you a drill, they give you a nail, and they tell you how to put the cabinet up. But putting the cabinet up still has to be your responsibility. The nail, the hammer, the drill, those are just coping skills. You have to take those coping skills now. You got to take them home. You got to trust the process, and you got to use those coping skills in your life. If you don't use those coping skills, nothing's gonna change. And it almost like if you go to the store and you got all these tools, all the hammers and the drills, and you brought them home and you put them in your garage, and you did not put the cabinet up, the cabinet is not gonna go up. It's not. You're not gonna wake up one day and the cabinet is just magically up. No, you have to take those tools, and you got to use those tools to put the cabinet up. And when you put the cabinet up, that means that you have learned coping skills, how to manage your mental health. There is no such thing as I got killed from my anxiety, or I got killed from my depression. No, you learn how to manage them. I got killed from my anger. It's called anger management. You learn how to manage, because those things that some of them are lifetime. Certain depression and anxiety, those things that you have struggled with them for almost the entire eternity of your life. But you learn how to cope with them. You learn how to get them out of your way to be able to achieve your goals and your dreams and live a healthy life. You learn how to manage them effectively. So yeah, I mean, that's just some words of encouragement. Never give up. It is never too late. It is never too late to seek out mental health assistance. It's never too late. And if you try a counselor, it's not working, go and try another one. Keep looking for the counselor. It does not mean that you don't try, because mental health is one of those fields where the individual that is involved. It's not like the medical field. Whether you believe in the flu or not, whether you believe in the flu medication or not, if you went to the hospital and you were given the flu medication, you will get better. Whether you believe the medication work or not, you will get better. But mental health is not that way. For mental health, you have to believe in those coping skills. You have to believe in your counselor. You have to believe that those coping skills and those things that you are learning, they help you. They will make you better. And as long you get there, you will start seeing small changes in your life. It's a gradual process, and sometimes I think that is one of the things that people struggle with is that the fact that most people see or the single people that address the medical field, how they want to describe the mental health field. Like if I have a headache, I go to the hospital and I get a pill. My headache goes away by the evening hours. Mental health does not work that way. For mental health, it takes a longer time. It take a process. And you have to be engaged. The problem you will fall. At times you will relapse, but you got to always get up and you got to keep going.
Well, so thank you for that. Thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise and experience. That was wonderful.
No problem.
People out there that want to find you and talk to you or get help from you, what could they find you at? Like websites, social media, all that.
You can find me on Facebook. Name is Burgess Brown. C. Burgess Brown. You can find me on Facebook. If you need somebody to talk to or you need somebody to reach out to, find me on Facebook. The name is C. Burgess Brown.
Great. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it. Wonderful. It was great. We need to talk about this again too. We had part 2 of this conversation too. It was just too great.
No problem. Yeah, sure. Just hit me up and we can set up an appointment and we can do it again.
All right. This has been the Countless Vlogcast with my guest, mental health professional Burgess Brown. Thank you again, Burgess. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to rewatch this, guys, subscribe on YouTube, Countless Vlogcast. Thank you guys for watching. I'm out.
All right.